Welcome to another episode of Tech Unhinged, where tech gets human. I'm your host, Rabia Javed, and joining me today is David Reid, Chief Technology and Marketing Officer at Knob and founder of RedM. David's career spans more than 3 decades of transforming engineering, innovation, and leadership across industries, from oil rigs to renewables to social impact. In this episode, we will unpack the economics of AI, the leadership mindsets driving transformation, and what it really means to build technology that serves people, not just the profits. Welcome to the show, David.
Thanks, Rabia. It's good to be here.
Well, David, we'll start off with a bit of an icebreaker. You've gone from building products to building brands. When you hear tech unhinged, what's your first wild idea you backed that everyone thought was crazy until it really works out?
I think all of my ideas were that way. So what was the first one? I think the first big deal that impacted the company, because it was happening all the time. I didn't know that was how I was wired at first. So I had really good bosses who saw that in me. But the first kind of push towards something was probably in the late 90s. I would imagine the Y2K moment helped, but I was definitely that we need to go faster, deeper into computing systems, and they need to connect everything that we do. That was crazy talk at that time. We didn't really have IIoT at all. In fact, one of our presidents, I kind of, because I started to push towards fully integrated, fully designed systems so that we could rapid automate. But that was 20 years before the day that was natural, and we had all the tech and the systems to do that well. So yeah, that was out there. That was one of many out there things that led to other things that made no sense to people. Which, integration of systems was always the part that people couldn't fully get because they couldn't imagine why.
So, David, for our audience, since you've been into both of tech and marketing, which would you weigh more in your career? Is it more along the tech side, or is it more along the marketing side?
My titles were more along the marketing side, and my work was more on the tech side. And so when they finally said, we'd like to give you the CTO role, I was like, finally? Like, yes, thank you. And they're like, do you want to give up the other one? No, I don't. I love them both. That's who I am. So I was very good on and I wouldn't say marketing traditional. It was more business thinking and structure and strategy for the company. But I was very geeky early on technology. We were probably starting about 95, was starting to design and develop massive robots that were, 140-foot tall robots. It was just a dream of the CEOs at the time. So I started designing and becoming an expert in that design. And that led to a lot of change and a lot of immediate connection into the industry, because people needed this thing but didn't understand it. So I had to run around the world every time someone wanted to build or design something. So yeah, very, very geeky. And I learned over my career to not let people know how much I know. Otherwise, I would have the job forever.
Yeah.
There's people way back then when we started at the same place, and then I moved up, and they're like, well, I get questions, technical questions, and I send them to these people, and they go, well, you could have answered that. And I said, I could have, but I don't want to. And I don't want them to know that I know. It doesn't help me, because that would be my job forever, so.
Yeah, absolutely. But also, David, by going through your bio and, the kind of work that you do, you often say that you live in an inventing world in your head. So what does that actually look like for you? Are you sketching, tinkering, or testing ideas before they ever leave that space? What's the creative process like?
That's a good question. I actually did sketch a lot for years. Like, I was solving a lot of problems. When you're wired like this, you don't value it at all. You don't even get excited about it. It's a weird thing, because everyone else is dreaming of what if I invented something, and they get really attached to and love the idea, and then they fall in love with their ideas. Whereas when your brain is constantly solving things, coming up with ideas, it's quite cheap to you, which is really, nobody can believe that, because it's what they aspire to. But it's a very busy brain, and so sorting it out is the problem. Because what you learn, I've done sessions where they'll say, okay, we're going to brainstorm, we're going to put up different parts of the operation. I'd like you to write ideas. I can be there for 3-4 hours. Most people are done in half an hour, and it doesn't stop, right? So it doesn't stop and eventually, and I was originally an architect, and I always thought, gosh, seeing it built, that would be the thing that I would love. And I didn't. I was like, I don't know why that's not satisfying. But you have to kind of work out how you're wired and what makes you happy. And I had this thing where people would come to me for brand new ideas. Can you give me 10 new ideas? And we would use them to run courses. I had a guy, this guy was developing some kind of think tank up in Canada. And he said, I hear you do ideas. And I'm like, yeah, I do. What do you want? He was 10 ideas in this space. So I just gave him 10 ideas, but it made his program blow up because they were great ideas to dig up on, just things we hadn't quite solved yet. So yeah, it's a weird thing. So I went through quite a journey, not worrying. Ideas they aren't worth anything unless they have a value. So you really have to filter that out and work out, well, when do I really want to apply this? It doesn't help to be in a group of people and constantly throw ideas out. It's actually confusing and messy. And I have books and books of sketches. So most of the new things that come up in our company, I have a sketch of it somewhere, but it's not important to tell someone that we had this idea. Because I learned along the way that when someone loves something and they're growing it, like you just let it go. Like let them own it. It's not important that you've thought of it or someone else thought of it or kills the life of it. So I actually moved from when I flew most of my career all over the world, so good 30 plus years. And I would sit on planes and sketch ideas. And I changed that to sketching, to drawing people, which was much better for me and healthy. And because it didn't matter that I had tons of ideas. So I kind of devalued that and had to go, when it's needed, it's a good thing. But getting other people to generate ideas and creating environments where ideas are business ready, that's kind of cool. So I like that. I like watching success is much better than ideas.
Yeah. Yeah, that's more of the manifestation of, the ideas that work out the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not easy. It's to find good ideas that can be a business, that's really hard. Ideas, you can have a million of them, but doesn't matter
So,
unless one can actually become something. So that process of ideation to product to success, to adoption in a way that, delivers returns is it's pretty cool.
but listening to this makes me all the more excited before we dive into, the main jargons of the subject today that we have, that it's not only gonna be someone from the tech perspective talking on these things, but also an artist or someone, who
Mm.
creates and then who sees how those things come into function. So, David, when we talk about, how AI has become the default answer for efficiency, but efficiency does not always mean profit. Can you think of a moment where AI saved time but ended up killing value?
Well, killing value. I mean, I think AI in its sense is killing value. So it changes your thought process. It's really important because people are getting excited now, but they forget we're at the very beginning. And everything that you produce that's a good idea in AI has absolutely no value. That doesn't make sense to people. They're like, hold on, no, it is. The stock market loves it. We're just say AI, and people give us money. Like people are excited because they have no clue what it really means. So yeah, lots of times a day. I think by its nature, it destroys value. I think years back, we avoided going towards a service business for this reason. We deliver services to service businesses, equipment, but everyone was like, we should become them. That's what we should do. I'm like, no, because they're going away, because their main thing is human skill. It's human brain power, and that's going to be worth nothing in the future. So it's not that all human brain power is going to be worth nothing, but the ability to compute, the ability to execute, that's going to become a labor job. It's going to become something that's not highly valued. And I don't think that I'm not doomsday about any of this. I think it's really great, but it's just changing. So you have to kind of play to, do you want to be in a business where you're hiring lots and lots of people because of their knowledge? Because knowledge is it's what's going to come from AI. But understanding AI is really important. It's like, it doesn't solve all problems at all. It just changes our world. It's the new calculator. It's gonna make things change, and what you're learning and why you're learning and how you use it's going to be different going forward. But different doesn't mean bad necessarily, but it does for some, because I love creative destruction, because I love to look at history and how things have changed, and the human ability to disregard change as it's coming is amazing, or to even imply the wrong things towards it. Or so yeah, I think AI is a very destructive force, and it will be an opportunity force as well.
Yeah, no, that makes absolute sense because As we say here as well, that change is the only constant, and you cannot just stand in the middle of it, because if you're not changing or keeping up with those changes, then, the problem is probably you. We see that how most leaders see AI as a cost problem or a labor problem, but you've often reframed it as a design problem. Can you unpack
Mhm.
what that means?
I think people apply software, let's talk general software. They apply it to human problems thinking it's going to solve it. And it doesn't. It's the whole understanding. This is part of my architecture background a bit, but the whole system thinking of, all the different components and where things go and what they are, how you build, how you even your interaction with AI is so important right now. Understanding what you're talking to, what you're working with, its strengths and its weaknesses. These are all design things, because the what AI doesn't solve is it is a big soup. I like to think of it that way. Like, it's got access to lots of stuff, and whatever is in the soup is really important for the way it tastes and what it can do. But it's still a soup. Like, it's not going to create something different than itself. And so people are forgetting, as they're going now and saying, hey, I'm going to apply AI to this and it's going to design this thing for me. It also would do that for someone else. It doesn't, whatever it produces is valueless. So you have to it's a really new way of thinking to understand that the learning how the human brain is still wildly necessary and can't be replicated. There are aspects that are really, really important, and how you use AI, where you use AI. It's the cost. I do think, like, efficiency and cost are byproducts. They're not the reason. And so how you adopt and adapt is you get people to start owning the journey. If you just deliver product from AI, you're doing the wrong thing. You're thinking in old thinking. Here's a thing that AI is doing for you. Please use it. They're not going to do that. But if you say, I want you to learn how to interact, let me teach you how this works. Let me teach you how you can interact with it. What can you do? And that's what we've done across the company. We put everyone into kind of an open AI system and said, here's your basic training. What can you do? Which is, if you ask the software companies, they go, that's terrible. We're making a system that's structured so that we can manage all of your things. So there's no chaos and no growth. But freedom is always where growth comes from. Bureaucracy starts to slow down growth, and then, command and control world kills it. So it's the cycle of things. And so freedom right now is so important, because letting people learn the tools, use the tools, and deliver the value is very different than, here's a tool that may take your job, which is what it sounds like to an employee, as opposed to, I want you to interact with this and get the value out of it, because there's so much you learn, because it's like being given a child that grows really, really fast, and everything in us doesn't think that way. So, if a lot of people think, well, it didn't do what I want, I'm done. It's like, well, it's a baby. Of course it didn't do it. But tomorrow it's a teenager, and then the next day, it's 30 years old. And so you're just not used to that level of development, but you do have to feed it. You have to give it what you need. And so the interaction with humans and developing better systems is pretty important right now.
If we look at the numbers, David, there's this growing idea that AI is a profit paradox. It's creating massive value for chip makers or cloud players, who are thriving, while many applications are still struggling to survive in the tech landscape.
Yeah.
Do you see this? Yeah, do you kind of see this as early turbulence while the market finds its footing, or are we heading towards a world where only the biggest players at the base are, gonna make profits out of it?
No, I think the biggest players are going away. I think
Oh,
they're panicked, and I think inside their closed rooms, they know that the thing they sell is about to be worth nothing. So it's really, I won't let anyone do long contracts with anybody in this space, and I'm encouraging small players to come along and disrupt, because if you look at creative disruption, it's going to find the big costs. Someone's making a lot of money here, and generally this is the history of creative destruction. If the people can rise up and do something, they get to topple the big wealthy ones. So if you look at Europe after the Black Plague, Eastern Europe, they said to all the less workers, lots of people had died. They said to them, listen, there's less of you, you're going to have to take less money. And in the UK, a weird thing happened where the people said, hey, there's less of us, you're going to have to pay us more. And it began this journey that led to, patent rights, land rights. And it was this uprising of people that became, the Industrial Revolution. And the people who had money didn't lose as much, but they definitely gave up a lot. That's what's coming to the big companies. Here's a thing. These are companies who use people to consult, or they use software writers to write code. But that's the core cost in their system. All of those things are going to AI. And my data scientists don't write code. They use AI to work in codes they don't even know. And then they test it with AI. And once I saw that, it was like, oh, here we go. This is what's happening. And I have had asked my head of data science, I'm like, you're coding your job away. And he's like, yeah, we are. He said, in fact, we're not coding, just so you know. Someone says they're coding nowadays, then they're lying, or they're about to lose their job, because the speed that we're going has changed. What we're doing is learning how to manage AI. It's where we're learning, because it is imperfect. And so you have to constantly be re-guiding the child, to have it grow healthily and well. So yeah, it's I just love this creative destruction. So big companies, they need new values. And what they're doing is, it's crazy. The software companies are increasing. So the Microsoft invention, which was, I'm going to trap you in a compound, and then I'm going to make you pay to be there. Then I'm going to charge you more and more and more and more. I'm way past my value case, but you can't get out of the compound. So you want to eat? You have to come to me. So that's the model of these big companies. So I'm excited for the young companies that are going to come and start eating away from the edges and destroy that. I mean, like ERP systems. I was sitting with a large company on a stage, and they were showing how AI had designed this car for them. Well, they're a software company. I laughed and was like, well, why aren't you designing an ERP that doesn't need the cost anymore? Well, of course, that's how you make your money. So you're showing us a car over here so that you keep being hired by us to do something we don't understand. But surely that's the place. That's where the cost pain is, where you're making money hand over fist because we can't afford to get out of your system. So I'm excited for this rapid movement, and the place that the creative destruction goes after is where the big money is, and there's massive profits in that space, and they think they're too big to fail. But I think inside themselves they know that they're a very, very high threat here, because that's the cost pain.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, David. And I loved how you used the analogy of a child for AI, and then how, professionals are now, mainly their job is to manage that
Yeah.
rather than doing their job. It made a lot of sense. So if we look at things from a bit of a strategic layer, I've seen that you've worked with in $1 trillion industry where risk is very real. When you evaluate new tech, what's your personal rule of thumb for deciding if something is a strategic leap or just another shiny object?
Well, what we don't do is, we're not really in science. We're not in the researchy world. So we don't do that. Some people do. And so we do understand who we are and where we fit. Because if we do science, we can't. The people who further science are bringing things to us on a journey that when it's ready, it's ready. But other industries will adopt that before we will. So for us, it's really, what I like the most is when because some people would say, well, you study the market and you find out where the needs are. The best products always had no market information, and the best products people didn't know they needed, right? And so that's the same for us. The best things nobody was asking for. But if you can understand pain, a group of really great inventors, and put them in a room, we were looking at renewables and growth in that space. Big growth market, no one's making money. I don't know if they tell you that, but they all don't make money. They go out of business constantly. They're constantly getting funded from well-meaning people, but collapsing, So I got some creative engineers and just said, okay, take anything in renewables and half the cost. Invent. And off they went, inventing. And we found different things. Some looked like really breakthrough. But then when you looked at it, there's like a market barrier. So you want to fail fast, but you also don't want to be like a startup. A startup has an idea, gets investment. Now we're married to the idea. What I want to do is have them break things all the time. Keep breaking things in renewables. Go try something, doesn't work, push it over, try something else, push it over. So, 100 ideas. We got 2 really good ones. And they were just obvious things that people weren't looking at. When you look at the cost of wind farm installation on land, what's the biggest cost? I don't know. What is it? The answer is cranes. Why? Well, because it's windy. Oh, so they rent expensive cranes and wait for there to be less wind in a place that you are because of the wind. So we designed a crane that can work in high winds. Nobody had done that. They were just using existing cranes. And it was simple design to say, how do we get in high winds and work all through the year? Worth a lot of money. So so you have to understand problems. That someone asked me yesterday, they had a spider robot, and they said, "Look at the spider robot instead of the dog robot, right?" Here's a spider robot, and I was like, "It can climb up walls," and I was like, "Great." And he said, "Do you have a problem that this could solve?" And I was like, "Please don't come to anyone and ask them that. If you didn't have an idea why you were designing it, like, don't design it." We
Yeah.
have one of our startups where I work with just was really mad that they were trying to do a free proof of concept for us, and I have to be careful. I don't want to say who it is, but they found a part of our business who said no, it's too expensive, and then they found another part said yeah, we'll give you a free proof of concept. And then I said, you probably should ask these people just so that there's no confusion. So they went back and said, hey, we're going to be talking to this country about doing this. And he said, did you tell them how much you're going to rent it for? And he said he was really mad, like, oh, this is politics. And I'm like, no, that's a really important question. Is there a willingness to pay the money that you want to make? If there isn't, don't do a free proof of concept. Your model's not going to work. So people get lost in that. So yeah, I'm all about the business side, and you take risks, you spend a lot of money. I mean, R&D is betting and risking, but you need enough intelligence behind it. A lot of these companies are like they're like kids who, these investors are building extensions to their parents' house so that they can still stay at home, so they build these great incubator labs so that companies don't die. It's like, well, maybe they should, maybe if they had a great idea, someone would invest and pull, but now you're letting them live longer so the venture capitalists can sell it to someone and then it collapses, so it's that business side, that basic sense of I can turn this quickly into value. And if I can't, I need something that will give me value to keep me alive. So that's the shiny objects are absolutely, they're fun. I love listening to every pitch. Like I enjoy it. But I'm quickly into because if you're not trying to kill your idea, you're not in the game at all.
And also in one of your podcasts, you mentioned, how machines talk back through data, vibration, and feedback loops if we
Yeah.
actually learn to listen to them. So how does that mindset translate to how you now guide AI systems that are starting to make their own calls at this point?
Yeah, I mean, and that is, AI, we throw it around, but we've been doing AI for 20 years with my team. I mean, and that is listening to machines, right? So it's listening to, sometimes actually listening to the machine, sometimes listening to signals. AI, it doesn't even, because that's such base AI or ML, really, machine learning is what you're doing in most of that cases. I think the application of AI is usually beyond that. It's usually in the space of I hadn't thought of this, and that's where people need to get the tools as quickly as possible, because there's so much invention that can happen. There's simple things that you're going to do much faster, but listening to machines, the machines should self-heal, right? So I'm dealing with a problem with another large software company out of Silicon Valley, who they're looking at completely autonomous systems. What I'm loving is the arrival of humanoid robots, or maybe it's the spider robot, I don't know. But looking at one of the problems you have in automation is you have to redesign systems so they can be automated, and that's had us go down really bad roads before we end up with expensive things that can't be put into the market. You try and automate something, you can be out of business really fast because a human's going to do it cheaper. So it's a great problem to have. But when you start having humanoids, it gets really interesting. So can you get cheaper robots to do more stuff, or do what humans are doing? So don't redesign the machines, just have them still, creating humanoid systems it's an interesting space for me. I'm really excited to, if you say I want no one, because I've been running a rig with industrial robots. In 1997, I designed this system idea back to the sketches. We actually made drawings of it. And here we are, 4 or 5 years ago, we're actually doing it. And in the interim, we were designing custom robots, and just buying industrial mining robots was the answer, and having them do what humans do. Whereas we were like, if you designed a dishwasher, you wouldn't design a robot to, wash plates. You make a washing machine, right? So dishwashing machine. So that idea that you got to change the process, we got enamored with it, and we were creating additional value, but it is much cheaper to buy simple robots and repeat the human work, and that's what we ended up doing. And it's a fascinating journey, because we've been able, once you see proper robots working that are designed for that kind of wear and tear, you immediately realize we don't have to be here anymore. We're just watching something boring. It does the same thing all the time. So it's an interesting journey, I think. I think working out, the right balance of when to do what. But willingness to pay is probably the number one thing that really matters in any design. Does someone like it? Yes. How much would you pay? That value equation is really important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there was another fascinating thing that I found out, and I had to sort of double check it, that you've led teams across 70 plus countries.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
huge number. So, what's the hardest part of helping people trust technology without feeling like they're giving up ownership of their work?
Autonomy. They need to allow people. The idea of corporations is an anti-human idea. The way I think of that is you don't find corporate babies. You never meet someone's kid and go, oh, it's very corporate. It's not it's an anti-human behavior. So human systems are really important. So we always apply our minds to non-industrialized, bureaucratic, like heavy systems. You have to allow independence. And so at the same time, bad things can happen when you let people do what they want to do. So it's a really weird balance. But so the answer is really work on good people to lead and let them express themselves, let them be different. There is, and if when you travel different cultures and you see companies say, this is our company culture, well, it's not possible because no country has the same culture. You're saying one company across lots of countries? Probably not. But base values, yeah, you can have the same base values. And we do. We measure across every single country and place. And it's weird. Once people start traveling and seeing our company, they go, but everyone's like us. So there is a culture thing, but we didn't tell them that's their culture. We just continue to allow small company thinking because that's how families work. Small units, they have connections. They have bigger family, but they don't connect as strongly to the bigger family. They connect to the local family. So when you think in those terms, that's what you're doing with tech as well. So for example, if you tell everyone we're adopting this technology, I would like you to do it, they'll be like, no. But if you sit with someone side by side and go, hey, check out what these guys did. What do you think? Ooh, can we try that? Oh, yeah, it's a good idea. Very different conversation. And so we even train people on purpose. So we get them together from different parts of the world, give them problems to solve across the whole company. They stop thinking all the negative things they thought about each other. One of my teams, I said, what do you think our most efficient thing is that we do? And they're like, oh, is it our software? Is it, they had all these ideas. I said, no, it's Friends Day Friday. And what that is we have someone, or we did back then, we've changed it now, it's Thursday lunches, but we did a breakfast where someone brought in their family and they made us their favorite breakfast food. And I said, when we do that, the people that you sit across from and look at and think bad thoughts about, or you think they think bad thoughts of you, they become human beings. Get to know them, their family, and you might not love them, you might just like them, but you definitely are not paranoid anymore. And I said, when you break down those barriers and systems humanly, and you're choosing it, I'm not making you do it, things just get better. And this is a world, how you solve world problems is you get people together, get them to work on things together, get them to trust each other, get them to know we're not bad people. And that's really efficient, because we waste time in our heads thinking about each other or thinking about, the politics of work. So it's really funny. So when for our leadership team, all this time, we are on the road. It's painful. But if we're not there, people assume the worst. They think
Yeah.
bad things about the company or what we're trying to do. They don't know us. If they know us, they'll go, oh yeah, you would never be that way. You're good people. So that's really what got me into podcasting / videos, and because we've got so many people, 35,000 people across, multiple countries. So how do we do that? So you have to have really normal, connected videos where you're being yourself, and they go, "Oh, we're not corporate." They're laughing at each other in a comfortable way. They're not cruel, but they're connected. And you go, "I like this." Anywhere I go, people know me because of the podcasts, but they think they know me well immediately, and it takes them a minute, and then they get weird and go, "Hey, someone said yesterday you're really tall." Like I said, "Well, not on television. Like I'm short on television," and it's very
Yeah.
funny. And someone said, Do people say that all the time? Like, it's funny to see you in real life." I said, well, you're the first person, but not normally. But that bond, when there was no bond, really, really
Yeah.
important. That's how you do big country, big company. You got to let people choose a path that says, I actually feel better about the people I work with.
That was, really interesting because, I feel like the bigger the team, the more the, roles that you juggle yourself into. I feel like there's a psychological aspect to things as well, where you get to learn too many new things about people or how people work. For instance, Gen Z has an entire different ethic of working.
Yeah.
And yeah, millennials or people before them, they are
Yeah.
actually kind of relearning or unlearning something that they used to
Mm.
do in their time. And you do see that, given when automation has taken a lot of repetitive tasks away, this particular generation, they're already in line of that.
Mhm.
So rather than thinking of something creatively, they would instead just probably hop onto AI,
Yeah.
right? So how do you work around with something like that, being at
Mhm.
your leadership position?
I think it is like same as Friends Day Friday. It's the same idea. You pull people out of the digital world to touch things and feel things, because it's I think my first time I was doing hand drawing for buildings. So I did that in pen in the UK, and then I came over to California and I'm doing it in pencil. And then they said, here's the computer. And it was awful because I would go in at 8 in the morning, but then 8 at night, I'm still there and I didn't know it was 8 at night. I didn't know I hadn't eaten because I was so into the machine. I could feel the unhealthiness of it. And so that's the biggest focus for any leader, is to think about people and how do we get you back to humanity from your isolation, because isolation's unhealthy. My team, not the company, but my teams do work from home in a lot of their world. But I do require Thursday lunchtime. That's the nucleus of us all being in the same place. And so some people will be in the office, and some people, as you come up to Thursday, and then on Thursday, everyone's there. And I tell them, I want you to bump into each other. I want you to talk. I want you to keep space in your calendar. Don't come here and just work in meetings all Thursday, because that bond is critical. Because when we went through 2020, I didn't tell people it's back to work time or it's 3 days a week time. I didn't do any of that. I just said, what do we want now that we've seen this? And everyone wanted different things, but people mostly who had kids wanted to pick them up and drop them off. I'm like, cool, then and I thought, well, let's make it this window. And then some people, no, it's 2 o'clock for me. Oh, okay. I honestly don't care. We have systems that measure what we do. Who cares? Let's make sure we're happy. And that personal happiness and engagement is critical across systems. And so you can't, when you could say, now you got lots of people, how do you do that? I spend an inordinate amount of time with my direct reports and then their direct reports. So what I'm doing is really teaching them how to be with people. I can't just do that one-on-one, but when they're serving someone else, I get to be there and go, I want it to feel this way. I want it to feel normal. If you're just reading a sheet for a review, in my nonprofit, I did reviews last Christmas, and everyone was nervous, and it freaked me out. I'm like, why is everyone like? They all thought they were in trouble because I wanted to do reviews, and I learned that culturally, people are using reviews to correct people, and I was like, that's the worst thing to do. Now nobody wants to go to, all you're doing is correcting them because you have no social skills to do that during the year. Horrible. So I didn't know that was happening, because I'm used to reviews always being an exciting, let's get together and see what's possible. How do we keep making you happier? What's even more happy? What would engage you? And you might be talking about things they don't like, but that's not important. Just do less of that, whatever that is. Let's find someone else to do that. Let's do the things we love. And I kind of always have the 3 food groups: the food you love, the food your mother made you eat because it's good for you, and then something you're allergic to. And knowing allergic is really important with people. Like, you could spend your whole career trying to fix something that's just not in your system. So don't fix it. So yeah, it's a really that's my general thinking, is how do you continue to pull people away from screens, live and connected.
I really like that, how you strategize it at your level, and then, your team feels that way, because it's really important to be aware of certain things in the leadership position. And not many people know how to do it the right way.
My teams all score the highest in the company for how happy they are and engaged, and so it works.
But then we see, David, that how if AI has its cons, there are certain pros as well. And it's sort of all about how, you look at it. And when we see that, AI, it has a way of spotlighting systems which had already been broken, be it in process or in leadership or culture. So from what you've seen, what's one uncomfortable truth that AI has exposed that leaders were not sort of ready to face, and it just hit them like that?
It's early days, I will say that. I think most leaders aren't ready to hear the truth. You know what I mean? It's one of the, I've been in leadership roles a long time now, but you work it pretty quickly. You never hear the truth in a leadership role. People tell you because you have power. So people talk to power and they talk in a different way. And it takes leaders a long time to learn that you've not been hearing the truth, So now you build an AI. How awkward is that? You felt good, but suddenly it turns out you weren't efficient. Turns out people weren't telling you the truth. Turns out, so that's a really hard thing that people aren't maybe ready for, is the psychology of, exposure. If you like, I've done leadership classes in our company for a long time, and but generally you're trying to get people to that uncomfortable place. A lot of people come to work to get away from the truth that their family is telling them. Their family knows the truth about what your flaws are. Those flaws are the same flaws at work, but at work it's not easy to have that conversation. So they like being at work because they feel like they get lots of encouragement and opportunity, and people don't tell them that stuff. And yeah, same with leadership. They grew up that way. They grew up not dealing with their junk. And if you've not grown up, in business, learning to really uncover your weaknesses, when AI starts uncovering weaknesses, there's going to be a lot of wanting to shut it down or stop it. Or whereas the embracing of that change is going to be really where people are going to succeed.
So in one of your talks, Tech in New Energy Age, you spoke about transforming decades of oil field engineering into renewable innovation. From what you've seen, what can legacy industries and new age players learn from each other when it comes to adopting technology?
Actually, my cousin works in the renewable space in Scotland, and he brought it up. I had him speak at one of our conferences. He assumed the worst of oil and gas, and he met our people and was shocked. He was just like, these are smart, like, energetic, good people. Like, I thought you were all bad people. And he said, so I'm going to ask something that I wasn't thinking of asking, but we're trying to do wind offshore, and we're doing it terribly. Yet you do offshore all day, every day, all over the world. Can you help us? And it was a simple ask, which led us down a road of what else could we do. And there's so much that we've learned. We're weird in oil and gas because they grew out of farms, and so it has this very high risk taking, simple talking type approach, but things can happen fast. They can be slow too, but they can also go fast. So that controlled risk taking is something that we do quite well, because the reason you never had to wait in line for petrol or gas is because we've done a good job of constantly finding new ways to get to that fuel in the world. That type of thinking is really helpful. We're very odd as an industry because we do crazy things. Like we sit with NASA and we sit with doctors. Doctors also work in pipe systems like we do. They just happen to be your veins. So the tools are the same, just micro. And then we're inner space and NASA's outer space. And we talk with SpaceX and these people. And we all get together. There's just a lot of innovation in tech, but speed is something that we've been very good at because it's like you say, it's high risk. So you have to do safety. When we first did drilling at 10,000 feet of water, we went to see Mission to Mars. They thought we were crazy because they would have spent a decade before doing the first well, and we did it in 2 years. So now, was there things that we learned on the way? Yeah. But the prize is there and the business is there. So you're trying to constantly access new resources and new capabilities. So there's a methodology that really has been helpful as we've gone into renewables. People really enjoy it. And we manufacture all over the world. So we understand manufacturing, we understand low cost. We're in very expensive place to manufacture, beating out, like, for example, we had a plant in Orange, California, next to Disneyland. It was cheaper than China and Poland to manufacture big, expensive machines. It wasn't because labor was cheap.
Yeah.
It was just really applied thinking, very much like the Japanese model of car making. We had lots of things because people wanted to stay in Southern California. So they got really creative and inventive. So there's things we've learned as an industry that are really useful. And when we've loved it because renewables generally are really low margin. And so we've not been that interested because they're low margin. But we went to, for example, geothermal. They're so low margin. They're doing the same thing we're doing. They're drilling holes in the ground, but they weren't using our technology because it was too expensive. And so we were like, is it? So we went to them. The first thing we did, we've created cutting machines out of diamonds. We manufacture diamonds and we put them on the front of the drilling system. And we used to use spikes to break up the rock. And they're still using the spikes from the 30s. And we're like, do you want to use these polycrystalline diamonds? And they're like, no, it's too expensive. And well, let's just try it. Let's design it for heat and we'll try it. 60% faster immediately. And they were like, oh, we can't afford not to use technology. So a lot of renewables has been trying to get lower cost instead of going, well, is there a technology that can make me go faster? And then we said to them, what's your biggest problem? Well, we can't use electronics. It's too hot. And so we're working with, the government to make these really high temperature electronics. We said, well, why don't you make it colder in the well? Well, that's not possible. And, well, you can cool the fluid and we've got a coating that can hold the temperature and you'll be pushing cold fluid. It will make you drill faster, break the rock faster. And they were like, oh, hadn't thought of that because it's more money.
Yeah.
So that's a thing, we've learned, what we learned in shale was how to do extremely low cost. When we drill in shale in the US, we can take a couple of days to a 4-day well that in the Middle East is a 60-day well. I mean, it's an incredible efficiency that we've learned. So other industry needs that. So what you have to do is learn how to bridge and talk to other industry and bring value. So yeah, that's the challenge, is how do you take your innovation somewhere? And there are things we're bad at. There's times like, oh no, don't do that. We've really failed in that space. But there's things you're good at. So it's knowing what you're good at and how to transfer it. We do a lot of learning from other industry because there's lots of things they do that are fascinating and helpful.
Yeah, usually see that, oil and energy industries, they're not usually as flashy, even, when you look at internal structures of people, and they're
Yeah.
usually, people with like ages who've been there, and then they just don't want to change. They want to stick with their, systems that work for
Well,
them.
it's usually, for us, it's usually that people don't know what we're doing. We don't, we've got a lot of engineers in our space and they just think it's obvious that because that's why when we meet with, when you're talking about, we started in Russia and Sakhalin Island, and basically there's whales in the area that we wanted to build platforms, so we couldn't be there. And so from the land, we went miles offshore and drilled. Technically impossible, but we did it because we're really good at the impossible. So there's things we do really fast, and it's quite amazing to drill for miles and know where you are. We're
Yeah.
doing amazing technology, and it just, people don't know. We don't tell them. We've been using, you see people managing pipe on drilling rigs. We haven't done that in years. I mean, you can find it, but generally every offshore, nobody touches pipe. We've had giant robots since the 90s that do that, but you don't see that on TV because it's not. There's PR agencies trying to make this industry look bad, when
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah.
It's not that it's perfect, but it's not as dumb as it sounds. It's actually quite a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And this all sounds really, really fascinating.
Yeah.
Some interesting work. I imagine the kind of, case studies that go out.
It's a
Yeah.
it's a deeply technical space, and it's full of geeks who love to talk about it. And we've done a lot of automation, a lot of closed loop stuffs because we've had to. If you're drilling in blind in the earth, systems that know what's happening and can communicate to the surface and sniff out and find out, where they're going. It's amazing. It's amazing work.
Absolutely. There's a lot more to your human side, David, than just your job of being, in tech or in the marketing at Knob. You've also founded RedM, which is a movement that mobilizes professionals to fight human trafficking and support survivors. That's a
Yeah.
completely different kind of battlefield. How has
Yeah.
that mission changed the way you lead and make decisions in your corporate life?
It's been good as we've gone across the world. That's been the fun part because it's a movement, right? So RedM is kind of resource empower and develop movement. And so it's taking the skills of people, educating them, empowering them to do something and developing them as they go. But it's a movement. So it's been really interesting to go into new cities. And because the main thing is if we get 30 people in a room in a company and we explain grooming that goes on with children, one person's going to put their hand up and say, that sounds like my child. So far, 100% of them have been traffickers trying to get to their kids. What you have is a problem in society that people don't know is there. And so what's interesting is how do you talk to people who don't want to listen? They've decided that as long as their 16-year-old doesn't go to Europe and we don't have to hire Liam Neeson to go get them after they've been trafficked, that they're okay. Well, that's less than 1% of the cases of what happens. Usually it's happening on computers in your house with your kids. So how do you get people to see it and do something about it? And so it's been a really fascinating study on people doing something that's not working. So the anti-trafficking movement has had all these scary films and messages that no one except the people already in it view. So how do you get people who don't want to hear something to hear something? And then how do you scale fast across the world? We're really working on how do you do that? How do you do big movements fast? How do you get people involved without them becoming it's their whole life? How do you get professionals to give just a little bit and a lot of them doing it? So it's been a fascinating study on human beings and how to build community. And it's the opposite of everything going on. It's the opposite of AI. People
Yeah.
need connection and they need trust and they need to know that their fellow person thinks the same way. Like we are humans who understand that human trafficking is wrong. There is no side to that argument.
Yeah.
Everyone's on the same side unless you're a trafficker. So it's a beautiful thing to have a movement that everyone can be a part of, yet not depress people, not tell them the heavy stories all the time, not live in So we do lots of events that are fun, nothing to do with trafficking. But if it gets money into helping survivors, and new people come in because we're having fun. They come to an event and they learn a little bit, and then we're done. And that little bit is enough. And then I run a podcast just so they can deep dive. It's on Join RedM, called The Movement, the podcast. But that allows you, if you want to go deep, you can. But most people don't. And I'm not trying to take people into heavy stories, because it's not sustainable in life to live in that place, a very, very heavy, depressing place. If you have a friend who's fighting trafficking, you won't spend a lot of time with them.
Yeah.
Because you can't take it, can't take the stories. It's too much. But if I can help you to protect the kids around you, you want that information, and then I don't care. You can go on. I don't need anything but just a little bit of time with people. So it's fun. It's a really weird thing to say that it's fun, but we have built professionals who love doing something about something. And it just creates a fantastic community of people. We really enjoy it.
No, it's fascinating, when you're at a workplace that is seeing all sides of you, where you've got to give back to the society, where you get to do something that you don't make money out of, but that is your passion eventually. So this is all really fascinating.
Well, it is human systems. I really believe that there is no work person and home person, so you got to work out how to integrate things, and so I became passionate about this, but and of course we've had people who've gone through it live with us, so it just was a part of our life, but I don't expect other people to do that. I expect them to just protect their children just enough. It's not stranger danger anymore, so I need people to know that 80% of traffickers, the kid knows the trafficker. So it's not like some stranger. So that whole idea that people grew up with is not even valid anymore. So it's getting people to my generation are all like, I'm more digital than most. Most of them don't even use social media, or if they do, it's Facebook. They're not deep. And so they don't know how to protect their kids. They don't know how to even talk about it. So there's a lot to do. It's really is fun. I love it. I spend all my spare time doing this.
And which brings me to say that small actions can create big changes. I feel like this is something that you live by as well. But David, for someone listening who feels powerless against large systems, corporate or social, what's one micro action they can take that actually matters?
So it's in your head, honestly, because you're looking at something you can't control, and so that's what overwhelms you, is you're in a space you can't control. So if you spend a lot of time thinking about how big the space is or how bad things are in the world, it's a mindset change. You have to go, I am where I am, and I have this responsibility. So if you have employees, if you just have a piece of work to do, what can I do here? How can I change this thing? And when you get that right and you focus on it, people will give you more things. And slowly, that's how I ended up coming to the top of the company. I wasn't trying. I just was trying to do the thing I had really well. And you look at what you can control. You have people around you. How can you influence? And so all of that ends up on your lap saying, what am I doing about me? How is my mental health? How do I think about myself? And everyone knows you think badly of yourself. Most people, unless there's another illness that you need help with. But generally, people are not feeling good about themselves. And so why is that? And if I could get everyone in that space of, we all have limbic systems in our brain that when something traumatic happens, which happens to everybody, usually as a child, it sets a system to defend you. And that system is the one that's telling you all the negative things, because it's trying to defend you from getting hurt. And so if you go back and do that work, everything can change, because you start to feel purpose and power in where you are. If you can start to work on yourself, you're going to be okay, and you're going to impact other people. And over time, you'll get more and more responsibility if you do that work. If you do the homework of get myself in a better mental state, you start to attract people because you got a positive outlook. You're feeling, I think everyone in the world can say what's wrong. Everyone. It is not a special skill. But if you can find something right to do, now you're talking. Now it's interesting. Anyone can use an explosive to tear down a building or a wrecking ball, but if you had the materials, could you build the building? That means there's work to do to learn how to build things. And then you start with yourself. When you can learn how to build yourself and be in better shape, then you can build other things. Other people can learn. You can learn from them, and you start to move in a system of change, and you can really impact the world, but you don't start with the world. If you're looking at a big corporate systems, for me, we merged with another company, and the culture was terrible. And when I finally made it up got to the C-suite, I just didn't feel like I belonged. And it turned out they didn't belong. And over time, there's me left and a couple of other people, and those people went away and better people came, So it's really a mindset thing. Is if you can get yourself in the right place and understand, I am not here without purpose, So the first purpose is let me learn how to be a better balanced human, and then I could impact the world. Digital world is trying to suck you in to not be effective, and you got to reject it in some ways and start creating space for yourself and being away from the influence of AI that's trying to learn you and shape you and feed you. And so, yeah, independence is really, really important. And we're going to need that, especially as AI gets stronger. We're going to need people who can think freely and can think well. Because when AI looks at the internet, it just says bad humans kill humans. It doesn't, it's because all of the negativity that's natural to us is out there, and it draws our attention because that's how our limbic system works. Yeah. Is it uses fear to get our attention to protect us. So you're going to have to fight that. You're going to have to fight that negativity and the ways that you're thinking, because you're interacting with AI and it's taking you down negative paths because it gets your attention. So you'd really have to shake it off. And so shaking it off and being focused and becoming a stronger person is the work for all of us.
So, David, since we are heading towards the ending of our conversation, I just have these last two questions for you. And I would sort of route back to the topic that if you had to sort of summarize it within 2 lines, is AI destroying margins or creating opportunities?
It's both. And the question is, where do you want to be? I recommend not being afraid of the destruction, but also looking for the creativity. So where is the thing that we need to be doing that's going to generate value that AI can't generate? Because it's a wrecking ball to a lot of business models. And so saying I'm going to try and stop it, which is the software companies today, they're trying to increase their prices, trap you more. You're better to say, who am I going to be once this wrecking ball comes through, and what are we going to build once everything's torn down? And that's the opportunity. So I think it's very exciting as long as you don't fear it and you dance with it, you train it. It needs training from well minds. And I've been running a Tesla for 5 years, and mostly because I worked out, you train it, you train the model, you teach it how to do stuff, it will do it. But if you just trust it, you don't understand AI or automation.
Yeah.
You don't just trust it. You've got to train it, and we need very well human beings to make a good job of where we're going as society.
So, David, now the last question, and one of my favorite questions to ask my guests. If there is one lesson you've learned the hard way that you wish more leaders or innovators understood sooner, what would it be? This
is another limbic part of our brain, but we identify with failure, and we shouldn't personalize it, because that's learning. Learning is a series of failure. So if you want to learn, you're going to have enough well-being to learn instead of blame when things go wrong. And that's how good things happen. Failure is not a human style. Learning is. Yeah. No, I think, David, this has been such a wonderful and powerful conversation. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for joining us on Tech Unhinged today. Thank you so much for having me.